happy sunny Monday, everyone. Coming at you from Kimberly, my studio here in Kimberly today. I am going to talk to you today about a very, very important topic for any painter to know about. There are 5 rules of fine art, which I mentioned last week. And one of the most important rules out of all of them is composition. And it's really important for you all painters to understand how the eye works and how the rules of optics apply when a person is looking at a painting. And you have to think about two very important things. One, the eye is going to be drawn immediately to the middle of the canvas like a bullseye. I want you to think of a bullseye. It's just automatically where the person's eye will look. It's going to naturally be drawn to the center of any canvas. And it will also be drawn to the edges of a canvas. Those are just two obvious facts. So when you are a painter, you want to control where the viewer is looking. And there are ways to do that. And one of the most important ways is through composition. So you want to avoid the very center of the canvas. And you also want to avoid, pointing at the 4 corners, for example, because those are 4 very important points. And you want to guide where that person's vision is going to be going. So you have the power with placement of your subject matter, where you're going to put the trees, where you're going to put the horizon line. And you don't want anything to be 50-50. Balance requires dominance. What does that mean, right? That took me a while to grasp that concept when my teacher first told me about it. Balance requires dominance. That means nothing is going to be 50-50. It's going to be 40-60 or 30-70. Super important. And there's a whole in-depth study you can do about the golden mean or something. Haven't researched in a lot of years, but there's a whole philosophy behind it, and how things look more balanced when they're not balanced. It's kind of a contradiction, but trust me, it works. And you want to lead a person into the painting. You want them to, when somebody's walking by your painting, you want to stop them in their tracks. You want them to look. You want them to be mesmerized. You want to really guide them, take them on a journey in your canvas. Okay? I want you to really, really ponder why your painting is going to have some interest. And you want to lead them in. And if you've got a path or something like that, it's really easy to lead them in. But take them on a journey into there. I did one painting several years ago, and it was called A River Runs Through It, and it was of this raging river which meandered in through a bunch of rocks, and it went up into the mountains. And a few months back, I did a whole art lecture on composition, and I talked about this painting, and I brought it up on the screen share. And so if you do want to go further into this subject matter, you may want to consider purchasing that recording, because I was able to show the person how I led them in. And that was a fascinating painting for me, because my mentor came in and took one look at this 36 by 48 inch canvas, and she's like, you need to add a half of a stroke. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's done, I've signed it, it's finished. And then all of a sudden she's like, no, you need to add a half of a stroke. And then I talk more about this in my recording, but it is totally true. Without this half a stroke, the person's vision was blocked. It totally transformed the entire composition and led the person in once I had added this half stroke. So that is how important composition is, and placement of things. And sometimes the subject matter is just this big, and it makes a difference as to whether a person is going to stay and ponder and embrace your painting or not. Very, very important. And there are all of these rules. You want your four corners to be different. You want to avoid the center. You want to have odd numbers of trees. You don't want all your tree branches to be ending in a row. These are all things that I talk about repeatedly in my classes. My students get bored of me telling them that their tree branches are all ending in a row, because our human psyche, our mind, tends to put things all even Steven. So when you're an artist, you have to think different. You've got to really embrace what a tree really looks like and use your eyes to see that in nature it's not even though it sometimes can appear to be that way. And once you learn all of these rules about composition, then you can learn how you can break them. And I say this because one of my mentors did an art exhibit in Calgary quite a few years ago, and there was her showpiece, her biggest painting that was on show was this amazing large, I believe it was a willow tree, and she placed it smack dab in the middle of the canvas. And it was just a phenomenal painting, and I laughed and I said, "Oh, Karen, that's quite the composition." And she laughed back and she's like, "Yes, my dear. Once you learn the rules, you can learn how to break the rules." And the reason she was able to get away with this tree directly in the middle of her canvas is because on the left side of the canvas, she had taken a whole bunch of branches, and it was like really quite grounded on that side, and it was much more heavier on that side versus the other side of the tree was quite a bit more spindly and softer. So it was more weighted on one side than it was on the other. So therefore it worked. It balanced itself because it was heavier on one side than the other. And sometimes I've done that. If I've done a still life of a bouquet of flowers, I was able to put the vase of flowers in the middle and then just have more flowers on the one side than on the other. So you want to have some flowers up, some flowers down and around, and there are ways to do composition. And another super important thing to contemplate when you are designing your composition and making your plan, you want to remember your negative shapes are just as important as your positive shapes. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to do some research and really get a good understanding of what a negative shape is, because it will transport you to another world. And I'm going to be talking about that. Maybe I'll do that next week in my Monday art tips. Talk about negative shape and line. That might be my art tip for next week. Let's do that, okay? Because that's a whole other thing. But you have to consider this. The shapes are like, you don't want repetitive shapes either. So that is part of your composition. If you've got like sky that's all a rectangle and then another rectangle on the other side of your tree, it's going to be boring. You want interesting shapes. Super important to consider all shapes. What else did I want to tell you about? Yeah, I guess we're already well into 9 minutes. I could keep talking about this all day. As you know, I do love talking about my art. And I hope you are all enjoying these art tips as much as I am enjoying doing them. Please keep comments coming. Please let me know if there's anything you would like me to discuss in my art tips in future. Like I said, there are 5 rules of fine art that are the make or break of any good painting, composition being one of them. Next week, as I say, I might discuss negative shape and line. That would be a good one to discuss as well. Very important to have all these considerations in your painting. One other quick little tidbit, I want to let you know that I am doing my next art lecture this coming up Saturday at 1 p.m. on Zoom, and I'm going to be talking about how to paint rocks. And of course, first thing you got to do is decide where you're going to put your rocks in your painting. You want all different sizes of rocks, shapes of rocks, and all those things. You want them to be clumped together, not all individually placed. All those things so important to think about before you ever even pick up your paintbrush. So if you'd like to join me on Zoom on Saturday, please drop me a note or check out my website. I've put the link to my art lectures and lessons in the comment below. So you can also check out my past composition lecture if that is something you're interested in. Otherwise, I hope to see you Saturday. It will be my last lecture of the year. And then that's it for the year for art lectures. In January 15th, I'll do one on light and shadow. So that'll be fun too. That's my little spiel for today. Please ask any questions you may have about composition and I will answer them. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.